Hello and welcome to Not Now in Theaters. My name is Will Turntail and I'm a writer and film fan from California. This episode is all about The Blob, 1988. It's a horror movie about a sticky, inside-out stomach that crash lands on Earth and starts devouring the people of a small town. A remake of the somewhat silly 1958 classic, the movie is full of gruesome deaths and dark humor, a far cry from the original. Some people consider it among the last great practical effects movies, and I'm excited to get into this sticky mess of a film with you. And okay, if you're a regular listener of this show, you'll remember I teased this episode forever as part of a Versus episode going up against horror film The Mist. To be transparent, this episode is already late as it is, and other than both movies involving writer, director, producer Frank Darabont, there's little reason to pit the two of them together other than a The Blank type of title and being horror films. The Mist against The Fog was the real winner for that Versus battle, a moisture movie showdown, and I screwed that up by already doing an episode on The Fog. So we'll just do The Blob and The Mist one at a time, and if that disappoints you, reach out and let me know. Before we start, a reminder that making films is hard and you have to respect that, so any criticisms are meant to be constructive. This review will contain spoilers. I'll do my best to call them out for you before they come up. Okay, let's get into the movie. The Blob, 1988 review. Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont redo a classic. In The Blob 1988, what looks like a tank-sized wad of Wrigley's chewing gum steamrolls a town. It's a bacteria on the loose, low on brains and high on desire. A desire to kill. And it swallows everyone in its path, bones and all. The film continues the partnership between director Chuck Russell and screenwriter-producer-director Frank Darabont. The two met on the films Hell Night and The Seduction, where Russell was a producer and Darabont a production assistant. Russell read Darabont's spec script for the popular TV show MASH and made him an offer to become his writing partner. From here, the two began drafting a script for The Blob, a remake of the 1958 classic. I've never seen the original, but I know it's loved for its campiness. It has a notoriously catchy theme song that reached the Billboard charts and features a 28-year-old Steve McQueen in his first leading role, as a teenager. The film's blob monster? Silicone with red food dye, occasionally smeared over a weather balloon. But Russell and Darabont's remake wanted to take the spooky concept down a dark alley and grow it up the hard, nasty way. It's said on IMDb's trivia page for the film that while they didn't have a lot of rules for the monster, they saw it as an inside-out stomach with acid burning, melting, and devouring what it touches, capitalizing on the fear of being eaten. Yeesh. Still, before Russell and Darabont could get to the Killer Goo movie they lusted for, they were hired for 1987's A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Russell slotted into the project as director, and he co-wrote the film with Darabont, along with Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner, who also received credit. Russell and Darabont came in with no easy task. They were given a measly 2 weeks to rework the script. But no worries, they fixed that thing in 10 days. And Dream Warriors, the third Freddy Krueger movie, was flung into a critical success and a box office win. Based on Dream Warriors' success, the duo of Russell and Darabont had the momentum to get the green light for The Blob. Though CGI was emerging, thankfully, the production used practical effects to birth the titular monster. Though it's said the production crew often went home from shooting days with blob all over themselves, the production, filming out in Abbeville, Louisiana, wrapped. But this time, success didn't bubble up. Cinema Group Pictures, later known as Palisades Entertainment, had the film slated for a Memorial Day release. But as the original distributor went bankrupt, TriStar Pictures acquired the rights. The film received an August 5th, 1988 release date. A late summer dump that's not always a promising sign. And despite some positive reviews, the film flubbed at the box office, grossing about $8.2 million on a approximately $10 million budget, depending on which source you reference. Over time, however, what the original audience missed, a bold, darker take that pushed the concept further, later viewers came to appreciate. Today, this grown-up horror remake is beloved, perhaps even surpassing the original in fans' eyes. Still, it's been a long time since those days of 1988. Effects have aged, so has the film. And hey, so have I. But let's not go there. So is The Blob a good movie? The plot of The Blob. Around Arborville, Colorado, it actually says California on the Wikipedia page, but I'm pretty sure it's Colorado. Around Arborville, Colorado, a meteorite crashes. A homeless person known as the Can Man traipses over to investigate. But a creature emerges from the crash, one we can only describe as a blob. And when the blob attaches itself to the Can Man's arm, the poor guy's pain begins. Soon, a group of young people runs into the Can Man. And I mean that literally, as with a car. So they take him to the local hospital. The group includes young Brian Flagg, a local miscreant, Megan Meg Penny, a high school cheerleader, and Paul Taylor, a high school football player. Soon, the true nature of the blob is revealed, and as it grows in size, victim by victim, the entire town, if not the world, is at risk. Can the people of Arborville find a way to stop the blob? Just to walk you through the cast of this excellent film, the Can Man is played by Billy Beck, Brian Flagg by Kevin Dillon, Megan Meg Penny by Shawnee Smith, Paul Taylor by Donovan Leitch. And you can read the rest of the main cast here in the transcript. It includes some names you may know because they appear in different Frank Darabont movies, as well as a lot of cool 80s movies and 90s movies. And if you wanted to see a trailer for the movie, I put one down in the bottom in the links in this episode section of this transcript. I also add any other links mentioned on this show in there in case you want to reference IMDb screen caps or other things I mentioned. So now let's get into what I loved about this movie. First up, it's setting up Sleepy Town, which is worth a point. The film opens with a nifty look at an ordinary town. The streets are quaint but empty. Everyone has gone to that high school football game. And I really mean everyone. Though if you're cynical, you could say that it's almost like a montage of all the good, old, American stuff the Blob has come in to wreck. And there's some neat intercutting between the cheerleaders at the football game, getting the crowd up, and Brian Flagg out on his dirt bike, revving the engine and eyeing up a dangerous jump. It's as if they're cheering for him. But I love that he doesn't make it over the bridge. I mean, after all, with that kind of mullet, which you can see with the link in the transcript, it's like God himself is grounding him. More on this in a moment. Next, let's discuss the film's heroes and heroine, which adds 3 points. Director Chuck Russell, co-writer Frank Darabont, and the other co-writers have done a top job creating the main and supporting characters. From the biggies to the bit part players, there are moments of heroism, panic, and comedy, all giving depth to this little town. Bad boy Brian Flagg is our tough guy. With his wicked mullet, and considering it's the 1980s, he looks like fake Kevin Bacon. But he's actual Kevin Dillon, yes, the brother of Matt Dillon, though the truth is the pair of them have been quite successful. Flagg is some kind of chip on his shoulder and gets no love from the cops, nor the town, except his pal Moss. I'm not sure what keeps Flagg hanging around the area, but maybe he'll have a statue of himself within it after these events. Who knows? Shawnee Smith plays Meg, the cheerleader who, instead of being clueless, is good at solving blobby problems. She's going out with Paul, but used to have a thing with Brian because, of course, the love triangle is what this movie could use. But the bad boy attraction makes sense when you consider how little her parents listened to her about the very real threat going on. Donovan Leitch Jr. is Paul, that tall, handsome high school football player who proves possession of a Letterman jacket isn't a license to kick ass. And then there are the side characters who add so much depth and levity to the film. Darabont regular Jeffrey DeMunn is the sheriff who thinks fondly of Fran, the local cafe owner. Art LaFleur, the actor who was Babe Ruth in The Sandlot, has some hilarious lines as the local pharmacist dispensing condoms. Or there's Joe Seneca as Dr. Christopher Meadows, the quintessential scientist who loves his work more than the people it could adversely affect. Many horror films gloss over their characters, yet this movie, which, well, glosses over them to death with a sticky killer blob, it does a fine job of filling them out. And now for the fantastic blob, also worth 3 points. When the blob smothers a new victim, it's gruesome. They get pulled into the muck and are unable to shake the stuff off of them. And while maybe you think that's just for the gore hounds, there really isn't much gore in a bloody way here. It's a terrifying, nasty end for anyone who can't get out of the gooey stuff's path. And without the disturbing deaths, the movie would be lame. We need the fear factor our characters feel, and the oh shit anticipation it fills in us as the Blob goes about its work. To make the Blob, the special effects team turned to silk bags filled with methyl cellulose, which is a food thickening agent, often found in stuff like milkshakes. They strung these bags together into what the crew has called a, quote, blob quilt, sometimes using blob quilt on top of blob quilt to achieve the desired movement of the creature. And that absence of CG keeps things from aging, especially in makeup and mechanical effects like this melting animatronic puppet I have a link to here in the transcript. Although the Blob sometimes looks a little unbelievable, particularly when they have to show it growing and getting out of control, the movie theater scene, for example, had to turn to stop motion animation, and at other times it looks like what I think is some green screen / projection work, with the characters running away from an image of the Blob behind them. Pulling out every trick, even miniatures make their way into the fray here. But every technique comes together, and the retro effects are a big win. And now for that lack of safety, which adds 2 points. I'm not a big slasher movie seeker, but I know their basic tropes. Having sex usually gets you killed, things often whittle down to 1 or 2 final characters, etc. And sometimes that inevitability can make them predictable. But the Blob was self-aware and full of misdirection. Plot armor is hard to spot, and nobody is safe here. There's even a soldier who pulls the pins on 2 grenades as the Blob attacks and consumes him, but he doesn't even make it explode. That's such a horror and action movie thing to do, yet in a dark sense of humor way, it comes to nothing here. And not everyone simply gets swallowed. There's some kitchen mischief, phone booth hijinks, and a particularly twisted intervention on a possible date rape. This one is called Go Blob Go, which adds 2 points. The film never drags. We motor all the way through the movie with chase scenes, new layers of intrigue about the creature's origins, or new plights for townspeople to be picked off in or escape from. But it's a tightly packed script that gives us a few moments here or there just to let us know that little bit about a character, and helping us give that little bit of a crap before they are about to get eaten and turned into the Blob's next crap. Assuming it poops. That's never revealed. Next, it's the conspiracy, which adds a point. And a warning, there are some spoilers coming up here, so use that chapter skip if you don't want to hear them. Still with me? Alright. Okay, just the title of this positive may have ruined part of the plot for you, but I have to say I love the conspiracy and the man-made military experiment origin story for the Blob. This movie didn't need to add that gear in the plot wheels. It could have just run with the concept of a monster from space running around and eating people like it needs to gain 10 tons for its next role. But adding that little story to it, that other series of side villains that are the government agents, ups the stakes and the class of the film. So now let's get into what I didn't think was working quite so well. First up, you call this healthcare? This is going to take away a point. Okay, this critique has little to do with the actual movie, but I have to point out that the hospital scene is really awful. It's so far from how a hospital staff would behave that it threw me out of the movie. After the kids hit the can man with a car, they brought him to the emergency room. But what happens next is unbelievable. It's not even close to possible that a nurse would allow kids to bring in an old guy they struck with a car, not ask any questions about the severity of that, and also put that someone who was hit by a vehicle in the waiting room. It's not triage. The idea of having a blob coming to Earth to wreak havoc on everyone is more believable to me than the way the hospital employees handled this situation. Next, it's let me tell you what we did, which takes away a point. And here, another major spoiler alert, so use the chapter skip if you don't want to hear this part of the movie. Okay, this script plays things a little more by the bookie than expected. There are a number of setups you may not realize will pay off later, and that's great. But what's strange is that when the scientist characters show up, they are casually talking with the science team about all of the creature's origins. Like, yeah, here we are, and let's explain exactly why. We're at the middle point of the movie to get the plot more up, and we'll just openly tell you all this part of the plot so you have it. While Frank Darabont is clearly a successful writer, I found the blanket tossing of exposition here a little jarring. But I hate to pull the "it's the Blob" card, but I think I'll pull it. So while it bugs me, yeah, it's a minor defect in a creature feature. So just go with it. And this last one is called Push It to the Limit. Oh no, we hit it, which takes away no points. As inventive as the film is, it's still confined to slasherness. For example, you see characters approach, say, a vent, a drain, a manhole, a place of isolation, and you figure, oh, that blob is coming. And it does, and it kills. So I think that always puts a little bit of a limit on the film, boiling it down to you watching someone live or die, knowing most of the time it's die. That's a bit of a harsh criticism. Do I watch kung fu movies and complain that it keeps breaking down into fistfights, or that a musical keeps breaking into song? No. But even movies in those genres can say and do a little more about things at large. Still, it's no sin to entertain and not change my life. I wasn't expecting a soliloquy from the Blob, heaving its last heaving breath about how it's somehow just a victim of all our wickedness, or something. So no points deducted, just an observation. So adding it all up, the Blob 88 smothers 10 points. On my scale of let's not watch, should I watch or go watch this movie, that lands it in the go watch rating. The Blob is a horror movie where you find yourself starting to, almost, root for the villain. It's a tongue-in-cheek, somewhat disgusting but grimly fun film. The pacing is ever forward, the movie never bores, and its practical effects still connect. Its characters, from the mains to the sides, feel complete. And its light conspiracy act gives it a little extra spice to the story. You have to reach far to criticize it. A few pieces of dialogue felt exposition dumpy, it won't jump the slasher mold, and one scene irritated me with its inaccuracies. But it's about as classy as a film about a monster run wild gets, and I encourage any movie fan who can handle some horrors to check it out. The legacy of the Blob. So what's the legacy of the Blob 88? Well, as we discussed, the film belongs in that large collection of movies that got passed over at release but made their way into the cult classic-esque world. It's been released a number of times on physical media, including in October 2019 by Shout Factory, a Scream Factory imprint, Collector's Edition Blu-ray, and the October 2023 Scream Factory 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. Did you get all that? So you know the movie has its fans. Today, you can find the film at a solid 70% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes, though oddly a 59% audience score. I would have thought the movie would flip these marks around, as this strikes me as a movie of the people, not the film-literate first crowd. But when I look at the first two audience reviews, they reference how bad the movie is if not for Steve McQueen, showing they are rating the 1958 version instead. It's stupid how Rotten Tomatoes would tank a movie's score over confusion like that, never bothering to make sure people categorize their reviews based on what they actually watched. So maybe reviews from the 58 version landing on the 88 version are part of the reason for a low audience score. I don't have time to investigate. The 88 Blob is, of course, a remake, and because remakes are what studios love to do now, another one is in the works. From this article by moviehooker.com, which sounds like a questionable source, the new version will, quote, lean into AI and gene editing. Okay, I can see that angle. Unless something has changed, the last I saw, David Bruckner is in line to direct, with David S. Goyer to produce. I don't like remakes, as many of us film fans recoil against, but it seems odd to criticize making a remake when it's a remake I'm praising here. So I'll try to keep an open mind, especially as horror movies often get remade. After all, John Carpenter's The Thing is a remake. Plus, it's been almost 40 years since the 88 version, so you're looking at generations who may not be familiar with the Blob monster. But I wouldn't try to follow a master like Frank Darabont, and that's where I feel the new version could go wrong. Plus, there's just something very 1980s about the gooey effects here that I fear won't carry over. If they do it with CGI, we'll all know what we're looking at is fake, and it won't feel real. Seeing the real actors underneath the Blob as its helpless victims is what makes it so disturbing. If you poke around the internet, you'll find many articles listing the Blob along with other best horror movie remakes of all time. so that's another solid piece of legacy. Director Chuck Russell has had an interesting career so far. He would recover from the Blob's financial failure with The Mask, that Jim Carrey movie from 1994. Well, one of the big 3 Jim Carrey movies of 1994. It would make $352 million on an $18 to $23 million budget. So, good work, Mr. Russell. But he's had an odd body of work, also directing films like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Eraser in 1996 and The Rock's The Scorpion King in 2002, but returning to horror with 2025's Witchboard, another horror remake. He was also a producer of the Michael Mann, Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx movie Collateral from 2004. Frank Darabont, of course, has gone on to make oh so many things. I don't know how he's not a household name. He's forever famous for adapting/directing Stephen King stories into movies like The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. But he's also directed, produced, written, or been a script doctor on films and TV shows like Saving Private Ryan, Collateral, The Mist, Tales from the Crypt, The Walking Dead, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, Mob City, Stranger Things, The Shield, and the list goes on. According to IMDb's trivia page, Donovan Leitch Jr., who played Paul, took Shawnee Smith, who played Meg, to the senior prom in real life. Then they later appeared together in this film. Chad McQueen, yes, the son of Steve McQueen from the original, was offered the role of Brian Flagg, but turned it down. He didn't like the script, and it conflicted with his policy of taking roles that followed his dad's legacy. Fair enough. And lastly, IMDb's trivia page also says Kevin Dillon, who played Brian, and Shawnee Smith, who played Meg, wore hair extensions at Chuck Russell's insistence. It says Dillon really hated them, but that's how Russell wanted the character to look. So now we know who's really at fault for that mullet. Okay, that's all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And if you haven't seen it yet, I hope you'll check out The Blob 1988. And if you have seen it, what do you think? Is it gross and amazing, or just another slasher? You can reach out and let me know on Blue Sky using a link in the transcript, or just search for Will Turntail. And if you like this episode, would you please take a minute or two of your time to leave me a review or rating on this podcast if you haven't done that already? A few people have rated it before, and I so appreciate that. It makes a massive difference. Or if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe. New episodes of this podcast come out on Tuesdays, unless when they don't, and they're late, like this one. Next week's episode will be either The Mist or Southern Comfort. The Mist is that Frank Darabont Stephen King adaptation from 2007 about horrible creatures showing up, keeping people locked in a grocery store. And Southern Comfort is a Walter Hill movie about a training exercise gone wrong in the Louisiana Bayou, where they piss off locals who start hunting them. Kind of like the same premise as Deliverance, but not quite, and considered by many to be secretly Walter Hill's best movie. Both those choices are a bit bleak, and I'm not sure why we're starting the new year off like that, but that's what I got for you. So be ready for one of those next week. This podcast episode is production copyright of Overegged Media, LLC, located in Sacramento, California. Reference photos linked in the transcript are copyrighted by the Internet Movie Database. This review's factual information was gathered through online sources like Wikipedia, IMDb, or interviews. Misrepresentations and errors are possible, but unintentional. Introduction music was Neon Laser Horizon by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It was licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. The rest of the music used in this podcast is also by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. It's also licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. The names of those tracks are Voxel Revolution, Pulse, and Proto Funk. See you next time.